welcome back to the studio. I got a blank canvas again, and not much more than an idea. I've got one line on here so far. I want to try to paint a little lake scene today with some rocks in the foreground. I guess if you're watching this, you probably see the finished video up in the corner, but as of right now, I don't even know what it's going to look like. I know I want some certain colors, and my biggest inspiration for this today, and I've painted one similar to this before, is I want to use this color. This is Brilliant Yellow Green. I like the I've done one kind of like this before where I use this color to make moss on the lake, way off in the distance, some really bright green moss. And so I want to make this whole painting kind of centered around that. So I don't want some of that bright green, but I want a lot of the other colors that are associated with that. I'm hoping to get some good colors today. And then as the lake kind of comes forward in the foreground, I'm going to have some rocks and some that you can kind of see through the water. But like I said, you're probably seeing the finished product in the corner anyway. But right now, all I have is a line. So we're going to start there. Let's look at the palette and see what colors we got. Okay, I'm going to start out today with a couple of different colors than what I usually start with. I mentioned that Brilliant Yellow Green. It's going to be a little while before we get to that, but it may mix in with some of our colors before that. But Cerulean Blue, Ultramarine Blue, Burnt Umber, and this is Magenta, and some white Gesso, which I hadn't got out yet, but we're going to start with those and see where it gets us. All right, for this first coat, I think I'm going to mix these colors right here on the canvas, so I won't even show you on the palette, but it's just going to be Cerulean Blue and some white, and I really just want, I want that to kind of be my first coat, my sort of toning the canvas with that Cerulean Blue. And what I want is for it to get lighter towards the middle, all the way down the middle of the canvas. Put some more paint on here, and if you work quickly enough with this, you can kind of do all this on the canvas. Make sure to get it good and covered. Work it down into the canvas, into the fabric. I'm just kind of working this blue out of my brush. Then I'm going to wash that out real quick, dry that brush a little bit, and then just come back with some gesso in the middle and let that blend. Ooh, got a little runny on me. And let that blend down. Get a little bit of that water out of my brush. In the middle, I want it to be pretty light. Still blue, but it's much lighter. Put a little bit more blue in. This first coat, like I said, is all about just getting a coat of paint on the canvas. Every bit of this just about is going to be covered up, except for right in the middle where the sky will show through, and then at the bottom where maybe the reflection for the water is going to come through. All right, so let that be about like that, but darker on the outsides. Pull my bar down. The canvas is popping, floating around on me. Now this first coat can have some streaks and things in it. It doesn't have to be perfect. I can get more what I want with the second coat. This is getting pretty much smooth. I think I'll just kind of smooth it out and then let my bright spot in the middle, I'll do it on the second coat. All right, let me dry that and I'll do another coat. Okay, that coat is dry now, but it's a little boring. I think I want to do my second coat. Put a little bit of that bright green in with my cerulean and see what I get. Yeah, I like that a little better. And want these colors to be a little more interesting. I really want to focus mostly on the middle because that's, like I said, all that's really going to show. You're going to have a lot of trees and things, and then reflections in the water of the trees. So Right in the middle is where it's going to show the most. And then I'll go a little lighter, kind of right in the middle. Not too much. Maybe down to here. And I know I lost my line, but I can easily put that back in. Since it is a water line, I did measure where I wanted to put it, just because if you don't and it gets crooked, it'll look very, very strange. So you got to get it straight. So I did measure 4 inches down from the top is where I had my line. So I'll start there. I'm going to hit this with the blow dryer, and then I'll put my line back in and we'll start painting. All right, so I'm going to start with some trees way in the back. I got my fan brush. This is a soft bristle fan brush. I put some water on it so you can see how the bristles separate. That helps me get the tree shape I want. For the color, I'm going to use this same sky color, which was Cerulean Blue, with a touch of that bright yellow green in there, and Gesso. But I'm just going to go one shade darker than what my sky is. Just one shade darker. And let's see if we can get a couple of these trees in here to look right. That's not darker, that's lighter. Cerulean Blue in that. That's it. So it barely shows up. I want to leave some light showing in the middle here. So I just want to kind of dab in some trees. Kind of in there. And this is just tapping, let the brush do the work. If your brush is open like this and has those edges, it will do the work for you. I got a little too much light on that time. Okay, and I'm just going to kind of come down in a V. I didn't put my line back on there. I said I was going to do that, didn't I? Let's see if I can get my arm out of the way here. Just want to kind of come down in a V shape, kind of in the middle. And this is the first coat of many. Each step of the way, I'm going to get a little darker and kind of come out both sides and let that kind of disappear off into the distance. Now with my V, my line was kind of right in this area, and so I know my reflection in the water is just going to be a kind of a mirror of this. I'll go ahead and start working that in. Just a little. Right. So now I'm going to go in with a little bit more Cerulean Blue. And that green, I'm using that green as my yellow in this palette. I may, when I get down to it, I may end up having to get some yellow and change these colors a little bit. I kind of want these colors to be a little different than what I usually do. This is just the same mixture, just less gesso, a little darker. And it will come inside that, or outside that just a little. Just like that. As it come down, same thing on the bottom. I want it to get really dark on the corners, really dark, shadowy. As it gets in here, I want it to be really almost black because I want that really bright green to show up. But for now, this is just our far off trees. See if I can do that with my hand without my hand getting in the way too much. I've learned in trying to make these videos, there is not a good way to have a camera on a canvas while you're trying to paint. It's in the way constantly. Now, I think I want to go ahead and, while I have these colors in this brush, I'm going to make a super light version of that. Lots of gesso in that same color, but lots of gesso. see what this looks like, kind of right in the middle here. And I'm just going to put just a little bit of this. See if I can get it to glow just a little bit. Here and down here. And the trick to that, I think, is going to be just kind of use my finger and tap it around. I want that to kind of be light showing through there. Not a lot of detail in this, though. It's real far away. Okay, that might be it. Might be enough. I don't know if that did what I wanted it to or not. I can go back to that light, that real light green. Just trying to make this look like it's fading off into the distance. Not really even, doesn't even really have to be the sky. It's kind of just light showing through the trees. I don't know, that bright green, those colors, it kind of gives this picture sort of a fantasy feel. That's kind of what I want to go for. Okay. While that's wet, I could scratch a few trunks in here. Palette knife. And try to do some going up, some going down, because this is going to be reflective. Okay, first layer. I think that looks pretty good. Let me go ahead and dry that. And we'll start expanding it out a little more. All right, let's look at these colors again. Now that I'm going out, I want to get a little more true green. So I'm going to have to go to my Ultramarine Blue. Okay, and I'm still using that bright green as my yellow, but I think the way I want to make these darker greens is I'm going to start by making sort of a black out of Ultramarine Blue and Burnt Umber. It's going to give me almost a black. See that? And it's leaning a little more towards the blue. You can see if I pull it off, I got a little more blue in it than brown. And then from there, if I add a little bit of that light green, which I'm using as my yellow, it's going to give me a darker green, but it's in that same family because it's made with those same colors. So I'm going to start with that color, and then I'm going to kind of transition to what will be almost black, leaning towards the blue. So those two greens right there are going to be my kind of where I'm working from in the next few layers of trees. All right, now I got my line back in so I can kind of see where I'm at. And I'm going to start with the lighter of those two greens. And let's go kind of right in here at the base. I'm going to start my first real layer of trees. All those are really kind of background. Maybe it's the sky, maybe it's trees way back. I'll start my first kind of real layer right here. And then again, going to reflect. A lot of this is going to be covered up, but at least if it's there, if it doesn't get covered up, it'll look right. It'll show through and look right. Now, really, when I'm doing this, I'm focusing on just the way the top edge of that looks, because I don't. The further it goes down, all this in here is going to get covered up by the next layer. But it's not a bad idea to go ahead and put some paint on there, because the next layer is going to be dark, and it's not going to be able to be dark enough if it doesn't have a dark color under it. If I'm painting on top of that really light blue, it won't get as dark as it needs to. So, but I do like to leave a little holes in it. Leave a little sky showing through here and there. This goes quick. You don't have to think too much about it. And as I go back, I don't care what this looks like because it will all be covered up. Basically just an underpainting at this point. Gotta get little more of that color mixed up for the other side. Real quick. Okay. And if this doesn't look exactly the same, that's okay. Coming out a little different, but if it ain't exactly the same, that's okay. It's trees. The trick with this fan brush is you got to get enough water in it that it'll separate, but the paint needs to be creamy enough that it'll cover. But especially on this front edge, I want to have those really light, lacy, detailed, little spots. So I need the bristles to really separate for that. Let some of them come up a little higher. This did get to be a little different color, but I kind of like it. I'll pull some of it over into here so it won't look too weird. And as I go back, I can add a little, looks like it needs a little more blue. Get a slightly different color. Just kind of painting a V and an upside down V here. Put some of this other color. Sprinkle that through here too. I like these weird colors it's giving me because I'm using these colors I don't use very often. As we come back, I'm gonna try to get a little darker, but like I said, all of this is going to be covered. My center is a little off center. That's okay. I kind of did that on purpose. I don't want it to be 100% symmetrical. I'm trying to keep my hand out of the way here, but it's not working out too well. Okay. Again, while it's wet, I'm gonna cheat a little bit, try to scratch in some trunks. Just a few. Make it look like I did something. All right. I'm going to dry that and we'll go to the next part. Now I got the dark green. This is almost black. It's pretty dark. Let me get my bristles I got too much paint in my brush. I'll get some of it off over here, and then when my bristles separate good, I can carry it out to the front. Start doing these edges. So I want this to come, I want it to be dark at the water line, but I don't want to cover up all of my other stuff. I'm going to let it kind of come up slowly. It's pretty dark though, and that's what I said. I want to get that, you need contrast. If I want that bright yellow to look bright yellow, a bright green rather, I need the contrast of it. I need the dark behind it. And that's where this comes in. I'm going to leave some light showing through at the top, but at the bottom I want this pretty solid. It may take a few coats of that to get it that way, but I think I want it to be pretty solid. And I know you're thinking, why did I do all that other stuff? I'm just going to cover it up with this. But like I said, if something does show through, it'll look right. And that's going to come pretty much all the way down the canvas. that reflection. All right. Same thing on the other side. Start by getting some paint off my brush. Maybe this side is a little more gradual with the slope. Instead of going straight up, maybe I'll go back a little slower. Not quite as high. Quite as quick. If I was not recording this and I'm painting it by myself, I would probably flip this canvas over and do this other side just because it's a little easier for the brush work, but it'd be all right. All of this is going to be pretty solid down here. It's pretty kind of impressionistic and not really a lot of real detail in it, anything yet. It don't take much. We'll do some detail at the end, but don't take a whole lot of detail. I'm getting some of that blue on here because it wasn't dry completely at the bottom. It's okay. All right. I kind of got a lake going already. Now I will go ahead and scratch in a few. I'll be a little more careful with these, kind of to make them have a reflection. Do a little more planning on them, I guess, than just scratching like crazy. And that way, maybe they won't look too weird. Maybe. I will paint some of these in too. This is just a little extra. It's one of them things that makes it look like you did a lot of detail when you really didn't. So already, kind of got a lake reflecting. I think that's working pretty good. Let me blow dry that, and we'll put a little more detail in those trees, but we're not going to do too much more to them. All right, now I'm going to revisit some of my lighter green that I had. So this is the green that I used up here, and just kind of pull out a few trees, or a few clusters of trees, kind of in the front a little bit, just a little something else in the foreground. I could probably use a different brush for this, but this one seems to be working pretty good. And I'm right here on the water line, so whatever I do, I gotta reflect it down. Now I want my moss, that bright green moss, to be right here on the water line, so it's gonna cover some of this up too. But this is just a little, maybe some of this tree caught a little bit of light in the foreground a little bit. Maybe some brush or grasses or something here. All right. Now that color's pretty good. I may go a little lighter with it. On the other side, just a little more, a couple of brighter trees in the front. The more kind of repetitive stuff like this that you can have repeating on the bottom, it sells that illusion a little better of reflection. It kind of comes across more as reflection. So that's why I want to do that. Okay. And I know that I'm going to have my my moss right at the water line there. So I'm going to come back in here with this darker shade. Make sure I'm good and dark right here at the water line. It's got a lot of blue in it, but I kind of like it. Okay. That's maybe as far as I even want to go with that. No, I think I will put some real tree trunks in there. Let's do that. These scratch ones are in there, but they don't look right. I'm going to just get some gesso and some brown, a little bit of that blue. I want a kind of a gray. I don't want anything that stands out too much. Let's see what this looks like. Kind of a gray. Maybe kind of clean some of these up a little. And since we're doing reflection, what goes up must come down, right? Let's see, let's do a couple right in there. Maybe even something that kind of comes up here. See if I can get a little darker. Kind of get something darker in here. Ain't really showing up too good. Maybe I make a little more of that black and use that, because I think that's, some of them need to be pretty dark. Let's see. Got a little blue to it, that's okay. This is just a liner brush that's, I like using those because they hold a lot of paint. Let me pull that one up a little bit. Maybe I have one that has a little character to it. That would be too much. Let's put a couple back here that are really thick. How about that? A few there that can kind of reflect here. And while I got that dark, I may darken up my shoreline a little bit with it too. That gives it a little bit of a ground there. And again, it's all about making it nice and dark so that my bright green will show up. I cannot make enough of that paint. I keep running out of it. Pretty dark. That's got too much brown in it. Just kind of put some heavy paint on here because that'll give me maybe some rock texture over there, because that's what the foreground is going to be. It's going to have a lot of rocks, so it doesn't hurt at all. Okay, so like I said, I'm going to have moss there. So I'm going to come on down now with my water. I've got, let's see how I want to do this. All right, I'm going to take some of that dark that I've been using that's almost black, but it kind of has a lean toward blue. So that's Ultramarine Blue, Burnt Umber to make black. And I put a little more ultramarine blue in it to keep it kind of leaning towards blue. And I got a lot of water in this. I think I want to start on the bottom and do a layer of this. That might be too much water. Let's see if I can get it a little creamier. That's definitely too much water. Actually, let me just wipe that out. I want to do it a little creamier. That's too wet. Yeah, that's probably better. So this is going to be water and rocks down here. As it goes up, I want it to fade into that light blue, but this down here is pretty dark. So the way to do that is I'm going to use water. I put it on with a lot of water, clean the brush out, and use water to kind of blend that out. Just water. And you can see it starts pulling some of those other colors. It may be pulling a little bit of that other paint that wasn't completely dry. That's okay. It gives me that water effect. And doing it thin like this is going to take a couple of layers, but this is sort of like a wash. You can put it on, wipe it off. As I come down, I want to wipe less of it off. I want to keep more down here. It's going to take a couple of layers of that. Most of that came off. I think I still got too much water in my paint. But by letting it have water in it like that, it makes it kind of see-through. It gives that, starts to create that illusion of water that you can see through. And I'm okay with the brush strokes giving me ripples. I'm going to put some of that in anyway. This needs to be darker, but it's not going to let me until it dries. So. All right, I'm going to blow dry that and do another layer of it. All right, so I'm switching to a smaller brush too. Yeah, that big one just holds way too much water. All right, so that's about how I want it to look going up. I'm gonna add a little more water on this layer. A little more water for the next layer. I'm just going to let that kind of disappear into the lighter part. And then you kind of just go with straight water at the top and kind of wash off some of that as I go down. And if you do this in layers, you dry it in between little layers, it creates a good effect, a good kind of clear water effect. So I'm going to blow dry that again. Okay, one more quick layer of that will do it, I believe. You got to make sure that you're good and dry between layers. If not, you'll reactivate that paint and start pulling it off. Okay. All right, I'm going to dry that and we'll move on. Okay, so I know I want some bigger rocks down here in the foreground, kind of framing this in, and I want the rocks to be smaller in the middle and then smaller as they go under the water and kind of more invisible as they go under the water. So what I got to try to do is make a color that is this color, but lighter. One shade darker, one shade darker. I'm going to find a little flat brush. Yeah, I think this little flat brush will probably be good for those small ones. So the color I'm going to have to do, let's look at the palette. Okay, you can see I've made a huge mess here, but I've got some of these colors still here. But I think what I'm going to end up with is just a, start with a black, which is just ultramarine blue and burnt umber. And when I add a little bit of that green to it, it gave me my tree color, which was kind of that. My water is a little more blue though, so I'm going to put some of that cerulean blue in it as well. So that those together, I think that's going to give me somewhere in what I want. Because these rocks, you know, the further they get under the water, they become kind of the color of the water. It may take a little lightening on some of them, a little gesso. I think I want to start there and work towards a darker, you know, maybe like this. Let's go with a more black here. I know these are not rock colors. You think of rocks being gray and brown, but really trying to get watercolors right here. This is the color of the water. And I like to use a flat brush so I can get those flat shapes for those rocks, kind of make them lay on top of each other like that. So let's come up here, see how that works out. Okay, this is the first color that I made. Let's see what it looks like. Yeah, it almost disappears on there, which is what I want. All right, and I'm gonna get a good bit of water in it because that's gonna make them even more transparent. And we'll come in here with this flat brush, and I just want a layer of rocks that vanish into the distance. These are small. They're kind of keeping them flat. These are smaller than what we're going to do coming forward for sure. As you come forward, they're going to get a little bigger and a little darker. Gradually add in a little bit of that dark mixture with it as I come forward. And I'm leaving some space between. I'm going to come back in and fill that in with a darker shade. It won't be light in between those. They kind of look like they're floating right now. But this is, if you do this quick, you can kind of just throw them in. Don't think about them too much. They'll serve you better if you do them quick. Darker as I come forward, and every time I go a little darker, I'm going to put a few of those, kind of pepper a few of those in higher up as well, so it kind of makes a seamless blend. And I'll make sure not to stop at the edge here, although my bigger rocks are kind of come up over this. That somehow got a lot of blue in it. I'm going to get this a good bit darker as it comes up here. Again, we'll put a few of these kind of peppered in further back. So maybe they're a little bigger or different color. All right, and these at the bottom are mostly going to be covered up. We'll let a few come out this way. That's the good thing about doing a painting that you don't really have a photo for, a reference photo, or a even a real concrete design in mind for. You can kind of just go with what works. If you see something that looks good, do more of it. If you see something that looks bad, do less of it. Kind of self-correcting in a little bit. Yeah. I don't like how they just look like they have a hard stop there, so I'm going to go back to my lighter invisible color and kind of work a few more of this up in here. I want it to look like this is the, what's happening all the way out. Okay. Now for the larger rocks, I'm going to go back to my bigger flat brush. And I want to start with them. I want to just start with a black. So I'm just going to make a blue and brown 50-50 ultramarine blue, burnt umber. I might let it lean a little bit towards brown as I come forward. I keep using up all my paint. Let's see what this looks like. And this is decision time. I want to have some big rocks right in here. The flat brush will help you make them, you know, look like they're in the water. Help you make them a little flatter. I don't mind if they're a little rounded on top, but I don't want, you know, a row of potatoes sitting in the water. That wouldn't be helpful. Just some individual shapes, and if you were brave enough to try it, you could do this with a palette knife. That can be fun. Actually, it actually is easy because it kind of gives you some shapes you wouldn't have made if you were doing it with a brush. Let me get this to lean off here just a little bit so I can get to the bottom of it a little better. Some larger stuff in the front here. These are just the base, the underpainting of the rocks. We're going to put some highlights and some moss and some stuff like that on them. But you can already see that kind of works, kind of sells the effect. You got to be able to have a few larger ones sticking out of the water here and there as you go back, and don't neglect to go up in the reflection a little bit too. Okay. Yeah, I like that so far. I'm going to get that completely dry before I do anything else to it. All right, so I've got that pretty dry. The black that I was using for those big rocks in the foreground, I'm going to take some of that on my liner brush and try to kind of sketch out the bottom edges of some of these rocks in the water. Just the bottom edges of them, like that. That'll give you, just on the ones kind of the first inch or so from the big rocks, kind of gives you a little more of that illusion of the water, the see-through water. Some of these are visible and some are not. If you put a little water in that black paint, and you can kind of put the dark underneath side of these rocks just to kind of show where some of them are. And if you look at it close enough, you can see where you painted them. You can kind of tell where they're at. You don't have to create new rocks. You're just kind of going under the ones that are there. And towards the bottom of here, where these rocks are, where the big rocks are, you want to have a lot of that. But as you go further up, it's less distinct. There's less of it. So it doesn't take a whole lot of it, but it does make a big difference. But as it goes off in the distance, you'll still see a little, shadows here and there in the rocks, but they won't be as distinct. But these on the foreground, they're going to have a pretty good bit of outline to them, almost all the way around some of these rocks. But definitely on the underside where where the shadowing would be. And every once in a while, you got to stand up, step back, and look at it and see what it needs. I've never been to this place. It's only in my imagination, so it can't be wrong, right? I think that's probably enough of that for now. I do want to do a little bit down in here, in between the rocks. A little bit of shaping. We'll have a lot of highlights and stuff down here to make those shapes, but every little bit helps. All right. I think the next thing I want to do is get my little flat brush, a 1/4 inch flat brush, and do some highlights on these rocks. And I want a lot of moss kind of on these rocks, but I think I'm going to start off with the same black and just add a little white to it to give me a little bit of a gray. And we'll start there. Now our light source is here. It's not super bright, but it is in the middle. So any light we put on these rocks, that's a little too light. I'm going to do it gradually. Any light we put on these rocks will be on that top side, that inside. This is where you can really like create the shapes of the rocks. Instead of making perfect, like I said, potatoes, you can give them edges, sharp edges, or some character to them. But that keeping your highlight on the side facing the light source is important. Now right here, I don't even know what's a rock and what's not, so I'm just going to create some here. That's working. They won't all have highlight, and we'll color some of these a little different here and there. Even some of these in the water will have a little highlight on them here and there. That's too bright. I like to use my fingers a lot. I put a little paint on, smear it around. Makes it easier. Top surfaces mostly on these. I kind of smear out the bottom with my finger sometimes. That's a potato right there, if I've ever seen one. I could break that up a little. So these you may have to get creative with deciding what's a rock and what's not. This, by not doing it too bright on the first layer, you can kind of create the shapes, and then on the next layer you can see which one needs to be brighter, which highlights need to be more, emphasized. And you can colorize them a little more. Like I think this next layer, I'll add a little bit more brown to that. A little bit more white. So I'll get a little bit of a brownish gray highlight. And I don't want all the rocks to have that, just a few of them. Now, if your first highlight covered half the rock, the next one should only cover a quarter of it. It's a little brighter, cover a little less, put a little texture with it. Now, I don't want all of them to have brown. Let me go over here and work a little bit. Get a few in here that have some brown. I want some of them to have some green in them too. The less you think about this, the better it'll work out. Promise you that. If you sit here and try to paint each individual rock and stress out about them, you're gonna hate it. All right, let me go in with a little bit of that bright green in my gray mixture and see what that looks like. Yeah, it's got a little green to it. I mean, I'm painting moss or algae, whatever that is on the water. I'm in Alabama, so I see this a lot going down the road. You see these little ponds. Usually it's ponds that aren't, moving a whole lot, like in the middle of a cow pasture or something, a little watering hole that would have at a certain time in the spring, it'll have these really bright green. I think it's an algae that grows on it. I keep calling it a moss, but it's really bright. That's what I'm going to be putting. That's going to be kind of the star of the show in this painting when we get to that part. Kind of saving it for later. Put some of this in the water as well. I even come back and put some really bright moss on some of these rocks. We'll break that potato up a little bit. Okay. Now, some of that you're going to want to be really dark. So when you're coming back doing these highlights and you start creating these shapes, now you can come back with the dark shadow side and really create some shapes in those rocks with the underside of them. Let's see, I didn't get dark enough. Okay, this is pretty dark. Go in here. Don't want to lose all my colors though. You don't want to get carried away with one layer and lose what you've done on the previous. I think that's pretty close to done, except for detail. I do want to make sure my corners are nice and dark. I'm cover up some of this light blue stuff in the corners because I do want the corners to be dark. I like for the corners to be dark because it kind of draws everything towards the center, especially with the light source here in the middle. I think I'm about ready to start on that moss, and then we'll come back and do some details here, details in the trees, kind of finishing touches, but I think that is probably 90% right there. Let's see what's first. All right, I want that bright green to be as bright as it can possibly be, and in order to do that, I'm going to put a coat of gesso in first. I'm going to just paint all my moss in gesso. I'm going to keep my water line pretty flat. And I want it to kind of come down. And the reason I'm doing the white is because that green, that brilliant light green, whatever it's called, yellow green, with acrylic paint, yellows especially, are very hard to paint over dark. It's really hard to cover. It takes a lot of layers, and it can get really thick looking, and it doesn't like to stick. It likes to just kind of smear and it's see-through. So this is a trick. Paint it white first. Looks like snow. But I'm going to paint it all in gesso. let it dry, and then I'll coat it over with that bright green, and it'll just really pop out. And I think I just want this to kind of come down in spots. Trying to think of how this stuff normally looks. Kind of in patches, kind of floats on the top of the lake, or on top of the pond usually. Yeah, something like that. Letting it tail back a little bit towards the bottom, so that it everything kind of points towards the middle. But now I do want it to come all the way across the middle. And up here, it can kind of follow the tree line down. My shoreline doesn't have to be perfectly razor straight because it is a shoreline. I have a couple gaps in it there. That's good. I'll do a little less on this side. I think I got a little too far down on that side anyway. Really want it to stand out. So that looks like snow now, but I like it. Okay, I'm going to dry that really good, and then I'll color it. Okay, moment of truth. Will it work? Let's see. I'm just using this stuff straight out of the tube. It is really bright, and it still may take a couple of coats of it, even with the white under it. It's bright. I am going to darken it up a little bit, I think, towards... Well, that don't look too bad, but I'm going to keep it on my white here as much as I can. I think I do want to darken it up just a little bit off in the distance under the trees, because it would have a little bit of a shadow to it, but let's just get it in there first. I'm okay with that pulling out a little further over the white. It'll be a little different shade. That's okay. Let me see. Hard to tell what it's going to look like until it's done, so just kind of hold my breath. The thing about this, though, is if you try something and it doesn't work, then you know. Yeah. To darken that, I think I'll take a little Cerulean Blue with it. Just a little. Yeah, that looks good. And I think I'll put that on the shoreline side of it. Yeah, that got it pretty green. Kind of try to do this while it's still wet. Blend it a little. It's bright. Do the other side, and then I'll step back and look at it and see what it needs. That really just jumps out there, don't it? Wipe some of that off. I like how it kind of softens the edge of it a little bit, though. Might not wipe too much off. pretty thick. And then back to my dark for the top edges. Crazy looking. Get my little liner brush here. See if I can get a little more detail with it. Some of these spots where it might just come out in little dots. Just a little bit. Okay, so that is bright, and that's what I wanted. It's looking a little more yellow than what I want right here. I'm going to let that dry, and I think I'm going to try to tweak that color just a little bit to make it match a little more with the rest of the painting. But I know I'm going to have to put some of those bright highlights, not as bright, down here and in the trees to kind of pull it all together. But I like where it's going so far. I'm going to dry that, and then I'll colorize it a little bit better. Okay, I like the greener part a little better than the bright yellow, and I think that's really because it's straight on top of that white. It just got a little too yellow. So I'm going to come back with somewhere in the middle, and this time it's got a lot of water in it, because for these, when you're doing another layer like this, you can just kind of wash it over with a little water, and it just kind of tints the color just a little. Softens everything up. Tint the color of it just a hair. Let me just get over most of that light stuff. I may let it stay super bright right in the front. Yeah, I think that did something for it. Take this over there. And some of this down here on these rocks is going to be important. See how it's not showing up nearly as bright because it don't have the white underneath it. But that green is in there. If I can get it to kind of look like moss on these rocks, that would be kind of a good effect. The thing about that's just going to be putting some texture and then kind of tapping it around with a finger. Let's see. Yeah, especially kind of right here in the middle. I'm okay with it being pretty bright. That's working. Leave some of this. Definitely want to leave some dark down in the corner there. And so by lightening that up a little bit, it definitely tied it to that. I'm going to come back with that same green, since I like how it's playing, how it is kind of see-through and how it does change the color based on what's under it. I'm going to come up here and pull some into these trees. I mean, this is that same flat brush, so I'm not going to get too much detail up here, but I'm just going to get some of the color. some of that brightness in this tree. And of course, if it's up there, it's down here just a little. Ooh, not that much. Yeah, I like that. Just in spots. Okay. Something else that I'm seeing that I kind of want is in my sky. It did have some of that green in the sky, but I don't think it got light enough right in the middle. Let's see if I can get that to be a little brighter, especially in the water. Kind of want that to be pretty bright. Let's work on the water first. And water on my finger. Smear that out a little. There you go. Kind of gotta, just where it kind of has a little bit of a glow to it. Not too much. Kind of adds to that kind of fantasy look a little bit. Okay. That helps our water look darker down here, which is helpful. Huh. Ooh, I got this magenta on the palette. That sounds crazy. We haven't used any of it yet, but that magenta is kind of our complementary color to that bright green. I'm going to mix a little bit of it with that green, just for the sake of getting some of that color in here. Maybe even down in the rocks a little bit. Get a little more of the magenta. Let's see what we get. Sometimes just a little color like that can make a big difference. Let me get it to where you can actually see that it's got the magenta in it. So when you're making, colors on a color wheel, if you find that color, the one directly across from it is complementary color. Or the opposite color. That color is used to make a shadow. So if you're painting a red barn, the opposite of red is green. If you mix a little green with the red, you get a shadow color for red. So it's kind of the big concept here. If we get a little bit of this magenta moving around in here, it'll complement that green a lot. I don't know where we're going to get it. I just need to put some in here somewhere. How about on these tree trunks right here, maybe? Let's get a little red on them. And it doesn't even look, this is almost straight magenta at this point. It's got a little bit of the green in it, but you can't even tell it when it's on here. It just kind of works. Let's see how close I can get to it without it getting weird. Really watery. Just to get a little color in there. You can barely even see that, but it does make a difference. Some of it in the shadows here. You know what? Maybe a little bit in the water down here too. Some of these rocks. We could just get a little tint of that magenta down here in the water. That'd be kind of cool. Very little. Very, very little. Not really noticeable. One more thing I think I want to fix. I'm going to come back with my darker green. This little tree up here needs a little love. It's gotten weird on me. The underside of it a little. Yeah. Bottom one looks better than the top one does. Well, let's see. Get a good dark. That ain't working. Now I messed up my... Look at me. Getting it everywhere. Get back in there with that dark. There we go. Just need a little more dark side to it. And I was trying to get a little bit of a trunk on it because it looks like it's kind of floating. Get back to my liner brush here and see what I can get for a little bit of a trunk on that tree. Not much. Just a little. I don't know. I think that's it. I think that's all I want to do. I try to do these every couple of weeks. And then we have an art class that's at my church, actually. That's just a couple of people that we get together and paint. And I put out those recordings as well, those classes. They're not as complete as this because they're kind of chaotic, but stay tuned for those things. And if you like to paint, grab a canvas. I'll go ahead and make a sketch of this. I didn't have one, but now that it's done, I'll make a quick sketch of it just so I can post it in the description. And I'll put this finished picture in the description if you want to use it as a reference to paint along with this one. But a little different, kind of fun. But I appreciate you watching, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.